I know? Before, not that shocking, huh? Before we proceed, today we're going to talk about flexors and extensors of the forearm and how to keep them all straight. And we're going to expand on this concept that I'm really into because I'm not a big memorizer, although there is obviously some stuff you have to memorize, which is why for 9 months now or 8 months I've been like, what are the 3 calf muscles? What are the 3 hamstrings? What are the 3, because there's some base knowledge you need. But as we found out that if a muscle is heading towards your thumb, that it has the word what in it, Mr. Jones?
Pollicis.
Thank you. And we found out that if a muscle is going to your little pinky on your hand or your toe, it has what 2 words in it, Mr. Bose? Yes, thank you. And we found out that if a muscle is going to 3 or 4 toes or 3 or 4 fingers, it has what word in it, Mr. Manzanares? Mr. Manzanares? If a muscle is going to your fingers or toes, 3 or 4 of them, what word is in it? Yeah.
Yeah, the muscles? Sorry.
That's okay.
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, I sure can. If a muscle is going to your fingers, 3 or 4 of them, or your toes, it'll have a certain word in it. Whether it's a flexor or extensor, it'll have a certain word in it. It'll have a word referring to these digits here. What would that word be?
Digitorum?
Yes, that's exactly right, sir. Digitorum. Very good. Thank you. You're done, sir. Perfect. We
Okay.
also, you did good. We did also discovered that the ulna divides the flexors from the extensor on one side of your arm. On the other side of the arm, this thing divides the flexors from the extensors, Mr. Overman.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, it was not worded well, sir. You've got flexors on one side of your forearm and extensors on the other side of your forearm.
Yeah.
There are lines that kind of separate those two. The ulna is one line. What's the thing on top that separates my flexors from my extensors?
The brachioradialis.
Thank you, sir. That's exactly what I wanted. Thank you. The brachioradialis, right? Awesome. And we discovered that all the flexors can be found on which side of my forearm, Miss Pugh?
The flexors are on the anterior side?
Yes. And we found all the extensors, Miss Young, can be found on which side? Miss Young? Which side can the extensors be found on in your forearm? Going once? Oh, there.
Sorry, I'm right here.
Good.
The extensors, I gotta think about it now. Your posterior.
Yes, she's exactly right. Your posterior. Which, by the way, everybody, what is tricky is right now you're looking at my posterior forearm. Because your forearms naturally medially rotate in like this. But this is anatomical position. So she's right. They're back here. Really well done. Thank you. And we learned also, or reviewed also, that there are 2 muscles in your anterior brachial region, on your anterior humerus, right here that I'm hitting. And what are those 2 muscles, Miss Suriel?
Excuse? Oh, okay. It's the
You're about to say
biceps brachii and the brachialis.
yes! Very well done. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
And then we learned that there's 1 muscle in the back of your arm, but there's 2 muscles that are responsible for an extension of the elbow. An extension of the elbow. There's 2 muscles responsible for an extension of the elbow. What are those 2 muscles, Mr. Ma?
Sir,
Yes,
triceps brachii antonius.
Mr. Ma. Man, he just like, really nicely done, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
And then to review everything we just said by asking you these same questions again to new people, right? If a muscle is going to your little finger or your little toe, it probably has these two words in it, Miss Dimitruk.
HD mini me.
Thank you, ma'am. And if a muscle is going to your thumb, it probably has this word in it, Mr. Godot.
I knew you were gonna call. It starts with a P.
Yeah, good, good. Yeah.
I don't know how to say it. Can you say
Polysis.
polysis? Thank you.
Thank you.
Polysis.
I like it. Starts with a P. That's good. And if a muscle is going to 3 or 4 fingers or 3 or 4 toes, it has this word in it, Miss Mares. You're on there, yeah. Can you hear me, Miss Mares? Maybe. Miss Mares, can you hear me? You there or not? Oh, you are.
They're called the digitorium.
Yeah! Thank you, ma'am. Digitorum. And, if a muscle... You're done, Miss Mares, by the way. I'm going to call somebody new. And if a muscle goes to your big toe, which I haven't said this already. I mean, not today, but if your muscle goes to your big toe, it has the word what in it, Miss Hendrickson?
If it goes to the big toe,
Yes.
polysis.
Yes. Like halitosis. Yes, holosis. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we learned that the muscle that divides your extensors from your flexors on your forearm is what, Miss Osuna?
I apologize. You better repeat that one more time.
You don't need to apologize. Thank you, ma'am. There's a muscle. Your forearm flexors are kind of on one side, your extensors on the other, and the ulna divides them on one side. There's a muscle on the other side that separates those flexors and extensors. What is the muscle that separates your flexors and your extensors?
The brachioradialis.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes. And we also learned that there are 2.5 supinators and 2.5 pronators. Yes? The 2.5 supinators would be what, Miss Rader?
The biceps brachii, the supinator, and the brachioradialis.
Yes, thank you. And the 2 pronators would be what, Miss Carrillo?
The 2.5 is the pronator teres, pronator quadratus, and brachioradialis.
Yes,
Yeah,
you're right.
brachioradialis.
Yeah. Miss Carrillo, why do I keep saying 2.5? I mean, that's kind of, it's obviously not exactly accurate. What's this half thing that I keep referring to?
It's on the lateral dividing, but it assists in both directions.
Yeah, it can only take you part way there. It can't completely supinate you over or completely pronate you, but when you're in one of those positions, it can pull you back up to neutral. Yeah. So that's just why I say half. It is a supinator and a pronator. That's the only way it can be both. There's very few muscles like that, I think. Mr. Bosch, you raised your hand.
Oh, no. I just want to answer your question. Sorry.
Oh, Mr. Bosch, that's so sweet. Hey, Mr. Bosch, leave your mic on. Not your hand, your mic. There you go. Mr. Bose, I appreciate that. I appreciate your enthusiasm, and I think it's actually really important. And I can tell you're like a lit rocket getting ready to take off. Like you really are. Like all the knowledge is there and all that kind of stuff. So, Mr. Bose, I would like to ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Okay.
Okay.
So, Mr. Bose, let's start with the leg really quick, just to kind of review for everybody, right? There are 6 muscles in the posterior leg. What are those 6 muscles?
You know, it's so funny. This is the exact one that Craven asked me yesterday. In the posterior leg,
Yeah.
it's the semis.
No,
So,
that's posterior. That's posterior thigh or femoral compartment. I'm talking about leg. This is stuff behind the tibia and the fibula.
Oh.
So give me your three calves. Yes.
Yeah, your
Okay.
calf muscles are considered. I forgot about this. Sorry. Posterior gastrocnemius, your soleus, your plantaris.
Okay.
And then the peroneus, longus, and brevis.
Those are lateral. I want three more that are behind the tibia and the fibula. That reach under and grab the bottom of the foot or the bottom of the toes. If only there was a muscle behind the tibialis.
Tibialis posterior.
Oh my gosh, did you just make that up? That's a really good idea. I'm going to start calling it that. Tibialis posterior. Now I need two muscles that pull on your toes.
And
curl them down.
Flexor muscle. It's the
Yes.
digital. Oh, wait.
What's the action?
Flexor digitorum longus.
Yes.
Yeah. Flexor digitorum longus and flexor digitorum brevis.
No.
No?
Flexor digitorum longus and what flexes? There is a flexor digitorum brevis, but it's in the foot. What's the one that flexes the big toe?
Sorry, flexor hallucis longus. I'm so sorry. So it's the tibialis posterior, gastrocnemius, soleus, plantaris, and your flexor hallucis longus and the flexor digitorum longus.
Excellent. So that's correct. Those are the six, but we're not done talking about them.
That's good.
Which two cross over the knee joint, the tibial femoral joint? All of them cross over the ankle joint. All of them. But which two cross over the tibial femoral joint? The knee.
The two muscles that cross over the knee are going to be...
Of the six you just listed.
A what?
It's two of the six you just listed. Like, I'm not looking for new muscles. I'm just looking for which two of the six you just listed also cross over the knee and not just the ankle. All of them cross over the ankle.
My question to you is, how do they cross the knee if we're talking about the back? So you're talking about they cross the back of the knee?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The gastrocnemius?
Yep. That's the important one, by the way. That's the only one I even care you remember, to be honest with you.
Okay. Sorry, I was like, how do they cross the knee if we're talking about the back? I'm so sorry.
But what is the other muscle, too? Even though I don't care about this one that much.
The soleus. Wait, no.
Soleus attaches to the soleal line.
Soleus is on the side.
No, soleus, I mean, you can touch it on both sides, but it attaches to the soleal line in the back of the tibia. What is the other tiny muscle? Actually, the belly of it's about the size of my thumb, and it has the longest tendon in the body that crosses over the knee, too. Kind of attaches lateral condyle femur. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It is another calf muscle.
Those are plantaris?
Yes. So plantaris and the gastrocnemius cross over the back of the knee. All of these cross over the ankle. Which one of these muscles help in a plantar flexion, even if that's not their main job? Which of these muscles of the six you listed help in a plantar flexion?
Plantaris.
Plantaris does, for sure. Excellent. Is that any more, or is that it? Let me help you on this one. Let me help you on this one. Can you see that what I'm holding up right now?
A highlighter, yeah.
Cool. Pretend like this is the leg, the tibia, and this is your foot.
Mm-hmm.
If the gastrocnemius attaches here, the soleus attaches here, the plantaris attaches here, and if stuff comes all the way under and attaches to your big toe, and stuff comes all the way under and attaches to all your other toes, and the tibialis posterior comes and attaches underneath here, if all of these pull what will happen to this? Like, if stuff up here, if your calf muscle's shortened, will you plantar flex?
Yeah.
Okay. If the stuff that's meant to pull your toes pulls your toes really hard, will you plantar flex?
Yeah. So all of them
Yes.
help you with the plantar
Yes.
flexion.
They all go underneath the foot essentially, and they all plantar flex. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. So let's finish that question really. She's like, I'm going to answer stuff about the forearms.
That's what I wanted, but you know.
So really quickly, what are the 6 muscles found in the posterior leg?
It's gonna be gastrocnemius, soleus, plantaris, your tibialis posterior, flexor hallucis longus, and flexor digitorum longus.
Nicely done. Which ones help in a plantar flexion?
All of them.
Yes. Which 2 cross over the knee and can also help in a flexion of the knee?
Gastrocnemius and soleus. Wait. Plantaris.
Yes.
Plantaris.
Gastrocnemius plantaris. Thank you, ma'am. Let's stop right there. Mr. Ma, you raised your hand, sir.
Oh no, just now I just want to clarify, because I didn't catch what Mr. Go said. I just want to clarify all the 5 muscles.
6.
All the 6 muscles in the posterior of the leg.
Yeah.
Do the flexion for the ankle.
Yeah.
For the,
Do you want me to clarify? By the way, I'm going to come to your campus and clarify. Like, you're going to get to see them today. Like, I will tape these muscles off today. You will see them at your campus. I'm going to come and I'm going to come and teach you this today. But do you want me to clarify the muscles right now? Do you want me to tell you them?
No.
Okay. You're good.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, no worries.
All right. Anybody else want to be quizzed before we go on to other stuff? Yeah.
I'll take the quiz.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Let's do it. Mr. Jones, let's review really quick. What are the 6 muscles found on the back of the leg?
All right, gastrocnemius, soleus, plantaris, tibialis posterior, flexor digitorum longus, and flexor hallucis longus.
Yes. Now, obviously, like the flexor hallucis longus is meant to bend down to flex the big toe. But these muscles can do other things, right? Which of these 6 muscles helps in a plantar flexion?
All of them.
Thank you. Which of these muscles can also help in a flexion of the tibial femoral joint, your knee joint?
Gastrocnemius and the plantaris.
Yes, because they also cross with the knee. So those do 2 actions, those 2 muscles do. I love that. What are the 2 muscles found on the lateral compartment of the leg?
Fibularis longus and brevis.
Yes, and what's another name for the fibularis longus and brevis?
Peroneal longus and brevis.
Thank you. And what are the 3 muscles found on the anterior leg?
Tibialis anterior, and then extensor digitorum longus, extensor hallucis longus.
Really nicely done. Which 2 muscles out of like the 11 that you just named form the stirrup of the foot? They form the stirrup of the foot because they insert in the same place on the foot, and they actually, one can invert you and one can evert you.
Fibularis longus and brevis, and what is the other one? It is
It's a muscle that crosses over the foot from lateral to medial side. It's kind of interesting.
I think it's the extensor digitorum longus.
Don't think that.
The flexor digitorum
Don't
longus?
think that either.
Okay.
Think about a muscle that actually is kind of on the anterior lateral side of the leg, but then crosses over the foot. This is how you can recognize it in a picture in a test. Sorry. So picture a muscle.
I don't know, on that one.
Yeah, it's a muscle in the front of the leg, but it is slightly lateral because of where the shin is, and it crosses over the foot. You've only got 3 muscles in the front of the leg. You already listed 2 of them, and it wasn't those.
What is my last front leg muscle?
I don't know. There's only a name for a muscle that would be in front of the tibia.
Tibialis anterior?
Oh, good. I was thinking tibialis frontalis or something, but that's much better. Tibialis
Oh man,
anterior.
I said
The
that.
tibialis
Oh my
anterior and the fibulars are kind of all really close together, but the tibialis anterior reaches over the other side leg and they grab,
Yes.
and they create the stirrups of the foot. Cool. All right, moving right along. I just want to add all the information. I think that's basically everything I think you should know about a foot. I would add to that for everybody that you should know the muscles on the side of the foot are abductors, right? One's going to be abductor digi mini-me, the other one's going to be abductor hallucis because of where they lie. And there's an adductor in the center of the foot. And there's a quadratus plantae and some cool stuff underneath there. But still, those are the big stuff we just covered. Sir, on the, yes, Mr. Bose.
Well, I was just wondering, when you come down to the campus, are you bringing like the skeleton and the muscle thingy?
No.
That takes a while. Okay.
No, I'm not. Because we're going to tape off a human being.
Oh, even better.
It could be one of you, but it might not be. It might be Miss Bauer. She might get voluntold. Yesterday it was Mr. Ibarra, and it took them as long to untape them as it did for me to tape him. He was wrapped up like a mummy. And the reason we used him was because so everybody else could see. Yeah.
Well, she'll have a lot of fun. Go, Miss Bauer.
Yeah. Or one of you. We actually didn't just use Mr. Ibarra, too. Mr. Jones, we put some tape on. Miss Raider, we did fascial lines on. We had tape going everywhere. Yeah. Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Let's leave it at that for now. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Anybody else want to be quizzed on something different? We've covered the lower leg. Anybody else? Or is it time to go on to Miss Hendrickson? Yeah, let's do it. You ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it. We're going to be talking about the femur, the femoral, everything around the femur. We just did the leg, so we're moving up, and we're not just going to do the back. We're going to talk about backside, front, femur, everything, right?
All right.
So posterior femur, what three muscles are there?
You got the biceps femoris, the semimembranosus, and the semitendinosus.
Yes. Which one is most lateral?
I think it's the biceps femoris.
Good. Which two are most medial?
The other two, the membranosus and the tendinosus.
Yes. Which ones have an origin on the ischial tuberosity? Your ischium.
I think they all do except one of the heads of the biceps femoris goes farther, right?
Well, it goes less far.
Oh, right. So one attaches to the
just the femur.
greater trochanter of the femur, and the other one attaches to the ischial tuberosity.
Yeah, I don't think it makes up the greater trochanter. I think it's the lateral linea aspera. But the fact is, one just goes from the femur to the fibula. Okay. What are the two actions of those muscles?
That extends the hip and flexes the knee.
That is correct. What is the proper term for the hip?
The acetabular femoral joint, or
I love
coxal joint.
Beautiful. Great answer. What's the proper term for the knee?
The tibiofemoral joint.
Beautiful answer. Thank you. What are the four quads that exist on the anterior and lateral compartment of the femur?
You got the rectus femoris, the vastus lateralis, vastus intermedius, and the vastus medialis.
Got it. Where do they all insert?
They all insert via the patella to the tibial tuberosity.
I'll take it. I'll take that. Yeah. They go through the patella into the tibial tuberosity, which allows them to create what kind of action?
And knee extension.
Extension of the knee. Yes. What's the proper term for the knee?
The tibiofemoral joint.
Thank you. The vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and vastus intermedius have origins on the femur and then insert into the patella and into the tibial tuberosity. One of the other muscle does not have an origin on the femur. It actually has an origin on what bone?
On the iliac.
Yeah.
Inferior iliac spine.
Wow.
Or
Wow. Yes. Yes, I would have been happy if you even got like ilium, anything, but that's exactly where it attaches. It attaches to the anterior, inferior iliac spine. Really nicely done. And so what 2 actions can it create? You already said 1, but what's the other action
So
it can create?
extending the knee and flexing the hip.
Awesome. Very, very good. Since we're on the front of the thigh, there is a muscle that actually has an origin on the anterior superior iliac spine. And inserts.
Oh,
Yes, what is
is
it?
it the tensor
No.
fasciata?
And it inserts into the pes anserinus.
Oh, the sartorius.
Yeah, sartorius is. Yep, that's exactly what it is. Inserts into the pes anserinus. What other 2 muscles insert in the pes anserinus?
The gracilis and I'm not sure if I know the other one. I think it's the semitendinosus.
That is correct. Very, very good. Okay, what are the 5 hip adductor muscles?
Adductor magnus, adductor longus, adductor brevis, gracilis, and pectineus.
Awesome. Which one of those is the shortest?
The pectineus.
Yes, which one is the longest?
It's either the magnus or the gracilis. I think it's the gracilis.
It is the gracilis. It has to be that long to get across the knee to insert in the pes anserinus. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Good. We're done. Thank you. Anybody else? That was the femur. Anybody else? We've done leg, femur.
Sir, I can't raise my hand because I'm on the phone,
you're so cute.
but this is Miss Obelus.
Miss Oblos, can we talk about hips then?
Yes.
Okay. And by the way, I want to tell everybody I did miss one. I just realized on the femur we didn't talk about. Miss Hendrickson brought up. We didn't really talk about tensor fascia lata in the IT band. I apologize. But it depends on how you link that all up. Anyway, Miss Oblos, what are the 3 gluteal muscles?
Gluteus maximus, gluteus medius, gluteus minimus.
Which one is most posterior?
What do you mean gluteus maximus?
Yes. Which one is most anterior on the body?
Minimus.
Yes. Which one is responsible mainly for an extension of the acetabular femoral joint?
That would be minimus. You said flexion or extension?
Extension.
That would be gluteus maximus.
Yes. Which one is primarily responsible for a flexion of the coxal joint?
Gluteus minimus.
Yes. Which one is primarily responsible for an abduction of the
gluteus medius?
Yes. Underneath the gluteus maximus are 6 deep lateral hip rotators. What are their names?
You have your piriformis, gemellus superior and inferior, your obturator internus and externus, and the quadratus femoris.
Yes. Which one of those is most superior?
Piriformis.
Yes. Which one is most inferior?
Quadratus femoris.
Yes, and all the other 4 can be found between them. Which one is known for pinching the sciatic nerve?
Piriformis.
Yes. I think that's it. Do you want a bonus, really difficult question?
We can try.
Okay.
Sure.
I have to think about this for a second. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. We have learned about 4 muscles that have the word quadratus in them. 4 muscles. Can you name the 4 muscles that are quadratus muscles? Yeah.
Oh, quadratus femoris, the pronator quadratus. You have your quadratus lumborum.
Yes.
That's 3.
That's 3. So you
You
gave
said
me
4.
Yes, you gave me the one that was in the deep 6, quadratus femoris. You gave me the one on the wrist, quadratus pronator quadratus. You gave me the one that was in abdominal, quadratus lumborum. There's another one that's a quadratus, and it's named by its location, kind of like the quadratus lumborum is named by its location. This one is named by its location. And I'm trying to give you, think about giving you a hint. And we don't talk about it very often, by the way. And just like your tree, it needs to be well planted.
On the foot, isn't it?
It is on the foot, yes. And it is a very strange muscle that actually inserts into the tendons of another muscle. It actually has an origin on the heel and actually inserts into the flexor digitorum longus tendons.
I can see it in my head. I'm sorry, sir, I can't recall it.
Well, do not apologize. It's quadratus plantae.
I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say plantaris, and I knew that was wrong, so I
don't
doubted
know. I actually suspect if you said that to a doctor, they'd understand you exactly. I don't think people are that precise. That was really good. Thank you, ma'am.
On multiple choice, I might have got that one.
Oh, yes. You would have gotten that on multiple choice. Multiple choice is nice, yeah.
Right.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Good job.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else before we move on? Okay. Let's talk about forearm flexors and extensors. Thank you for your patience. It's just that I'm trying to make sure you guys have heard what I'm looking for every day, right? The stuff that I think is important. So that it's not just like, know the 4,000 pages of the 2 books we've got. Okay, let me share my slideshow with you. We're going to learn something really cool. Just like we learned that muscles that go to the thumb are named pollicis, muscles that go to the pinky are named digiti minimi, muscles that go to the digits are named digitorum, flexors are on one side, extensors on the other side. We're going to find that the flexors and extensors are often named by where they go to. So if a flexor goes across your forearm, but not to your fingers, but just goes across your wrist so that it bends your wrist, it'll be called flexor carpi something. And quite often it's called flexor carpi whatever it's by. So if it runs up the ulna, it's called flexor carpi ulnaris. So we're going to find that we can actually, instead of memorizing all these, we can actually guess them, especially on a multiple choice test. And you think I'm kind of like just giving this away, but this is how I want you to think in the future. That's why I'm saying this. I actually don't want you to be like, memorize every last little thing. I want you to be like, there's a muscle on the anterior arm going across the wrist, not to a finger, just going across the wrist, and it runs by the ulna. That would be highly likely that that is the flexor, because it's in front, carpi, because it crosses the carpals, ulnaris, because it runs by the ulna. It's that simple. And that doesn't work, well, it works a lot. You'll see. All right, so again, I want you to memorize that concept, but not necessarily the numbers. I mean, the muscles. Boom. Da, 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 da. Here we go. Sharing our presentation in 3, 2, 1. Bam. Okay. Well, I'm gonna skip past this. Hold on. Trust me on this. Let's see. Okay. This picture is actually very important. So if you look at the picture on the left here, oh no, what are you doing? Okay, if you look at the picture on the left here, this person grabbing the forearm flexors, notice that they start on the anterior side. This is the anterior side of the forearm, but where do they head? They really do head off diagonally to the medial condyle of the humerus, right? They really do head off diagonally to the medial condyle of the humerus. So they run actually kind of diagonal on a forearm, and the brachioradialis is here. And the same thing is true underneath. They actually run, the extensors actually run, they start out back here, but they start to run diagonal to get over to the lateral epicondyle. So I just want you to really have a feel for when you're rubbing these. I actually don't rub them straight up the arm. I actually head them over to the condyle that I'm working on. Super important. Okay, let's talk about them. Let's talk about extensors. Extensors are found on which side of the forearm? Anybody?
Lateral.
Lateral. We'll take it. Wait, no. I can't believe I just said that. No, we won't take that.
It's the posterior.
Thank you. Posterior. They do have an origin on the lateral epicondyle. That might be where you got that, Mr. Jones. They're on the posterior side, right, of the forearm. Yep. And I'm trying to look at this picture really quick to make sure I'm saying this right. Hold on. Yes, and they go to what? Extensor. Hold on, everybody. Now I'm throwing off. Yes, and they go to the lateral epicondyle. Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm losing it. Let's talk about these. Let me get you a picture. Okay, let's look at these individually and why you don't really need to memorize them. We have a muscle here that goes across the wrist, right? Goes across the wrist. And so you can see that if it grabs it, hold on, I've got to silence this light in here. There we go. You can see that it goes across the wrist and inserts into the hand here. It doesn't really go to a finger, right? It inserts in the base of the metacarpals. And you've got another one over here that does the same thing. One grabs on metacarpal 2, one grabs on metacarpal 3. That is not that important to remember. I sure don't memorize that when I'm massaging somebody. For one thing, I'm more concerned about the bellies of the muscle up here, right? But you have a muscle that's on the back side of the arm, so it's an extensor. It goes across the wrist, and it runs by the radius. The radius is always by the thumb. So we call it extensor carpi radialis longus and extensor carpi radialis brevis. And I promise you that if you get a test from me, I will not ask you to distinguish between the longus and the brevis. Do you follow me? I don't care. I don't care that you can tell the difference between the longus and brevis. I can't tell the difference between the longus and brevis. I know how it's done, by the way. The longus grabs on the supracondylar ridge, which is higher up here, but they're both on this epicondyle. They really are. It really is a pointless thing to memorize. The fact is, if you see a muscle going from this lateral epicondyle across the wrist here, running by the radius, one of your choices would either be extensor carpi radialis longus or extensor carpi radialis brevis, but not both. Because that level of detail is just not important. Does that make sense, Miss Carrillo? Please talk to me.
I thought it was because of the bellies. The longest belly is longer than the brevis belly.
It really could be. I thought it was because of. I mean, by the way, your idea holds true here. That's for sure, huh? But I thought it was because it grabbed on higher up here. And that doesn't mean I'm right, but the supracondylar ridge is higher up. It's more proximal on the humerus than the common extensor tendon. But from our point of view, when you feel this condyle, they all hook on here. The only answer to these is that they attach to basically they all attach to the common extensor tendon from the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. And the common extensor tendon is just common because they all use it. It's the same area. The real answer to all these is their origin is essentially on the lateral condyle of the humerus. Lateral condyle of the humerus. If it's an extensor, it's lateral condyle of the humerus. All the time. All the time. There's something to grab onto other areas too, but really that's what you need to know. From massaging it, from fixing it, from everything. All of these. Yes, Mr. Singletary.
Is the extensor carpi radialis brevis, is that below the longus? I guess what I'm saying is is it deep the radius longus more? Is it more deep than the longus?
I don't know. I would Google it and find out if I was you, if you care. Here's why I don't know. And why I don't think it matters, by the way, which is a lame answer, because I'm trying to justify my ignorance. But the reason I don't think it matters is I suspect they lay over each other almost perfectly. And so you're going to care about rubbing them both for the same reasons. You're never going to work on somebody and be like, I know it's the extensor carpi radialis brevis and not the longus that's causing them problems. It's almost unheard of. You're going to rub both of those, and it's kind of like the proneus longus and brevis. The proneus longus is actually what I tend to care about more, but they lay on top of each other, and I can't help but rub them both. Does that make sense? So I don't care really which one's deep to the other one. But it's a great question. I apologize for not knowing. I just don't know. I can't. Yeah. You could figure it out if you wanted to really trace it down on somebody's body. You wouldn't even have to Google it, but I suspect Miss Creo just found out. What is it, Miss Creo? Which one's...
I didn't look it up, but I was looking at the picture, and I don't know how accurate the picture is, but if you look at the brevis, it looks like it's going more towards into the forearm.
So you think
it's
it'd be
overlapping
and maybe be more superficial?
More. Yeah, I think actually it's deeper because it's going more in towards between the bones of the radius and the ulna, whereas the longus looks like it's...
I think the brevis would be more superficial.
It looks like longus is over top of brevis, but brevis is still showing, but a big portion of the belly of the brevis underneath the longus.
I'm looking this up because I think it's the brevis is more superficial. Hold on. Let's see. It says, so hold on. The brevis can be found above the extensor carpi radius. What?
It attaches above it, I think.
Well, I can't even get a good answer here. All right, I've got to research this more, and I don't want to waste your guys' time. You guys could easily be right, by the way. You guys could easily be right. I'm sticking with my brevis is more superficial. So we'll see. That doesn't make it right, by the way. I'll find out. Okay, and please feel free to look it up and see if you can get a definitive answer. Okay, but the point is, if you see a picture of a muscle, which you will, running by the radius attached to the lateral epicondyle on the posterior forearm, going across the wrist, whether it's going to the second or the third metacarpal, it's an extensor carpi radialis, right? Either longus or brevis, and we don't care about the other part. And when you rub somebody, they're both in the same area. They just feel like a big, thick muscle in the same area. Let's look at the extensor carpi ulnaris. Now, I told you all extensors attach to the common, tendon of the lateral epicondyle or the lateral epicondyle. This one does too. So it starts by the radius. Don't be thrown off by that. But where does it end? I mean, it starts by the ulna, but where does it end up? Sorry, it starts by the radius, but where does it end up? It flips over to the ulna. And so it's named that way because we just learned about ones that run by the radius. So if you see a muscle on the back side of the arm, it's got to be an extensor. If it runs just across the wrist and doesn't go to any fingers out here, it's got to be carpi. It runs across the carpals. And if it ends up over here by the ulna, it's called extensor carpi ulnaris. To me, that makes very, very good sense. Like they're sticking with this ruling very, very well. Can we see that? And it makes sense that you have several muscles running across your wrist to help you do an extension of the wrist, and that they grab onto various metacarpals to help lift your hand up. That's perfectly normal. Then we've got a muscle on the posterior arm, right? Again, origin, lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Always. The answer is always. Now, somebody might say the supracondylar ridge or the common tendon, but it's essentially always the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Back side of the arm, it's got to be an extensor. Wait, it goes to the digits. There is only one right answer if you see this muscle. That is an extensor digitorum. And I promise you it will not be a longus and a brevis. We will not be trying to throw you off with longuses and brevises. That's not the point. Although, if you are ever stuck with that dilemma, between a choice between those two, longuses usually, this does not always work, but usually live up the forearm and the leg. Brevises usually live in the hand and the foot. So if you had to pick, if somebody's like, well, this is a longus or a brevis, then if it's in the forearm, guess longus. If it's in the hand, guess brevis. But that's not going to come up in this class. Extensor digitorum, right? Goes to the digits, easy peasy. Look at this picture here. I love these pictures because they show you the origin insertions. Look at the origins. This is the same origins. They're showing you from front and back. Look at the origins. They are all around the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. The origin for all extensors are the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. I'm sorry I keep saying this, but please, 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 please. And then they insert back here. Cool. This person rubbing right here, by rubbing around the lateral epicondyle of the humerus, they are rubbing all of the forearm extensors, sorry, all the forearm extensors. Now don't get me wrong, we're going to learn about little ones that live in the hand, but when you're up in the forearm, they're all right here and they're all going to this lateral epicondyle. And you should too. And actually, I like the way this person's holding the client's hand. I do this all the time. And then I can kind of wiggle it and manipulate all this stuff and get it here. Yeah? Okay. Let's take a break right there because that's actually a good place to take a break. The extensors of the forearm. Yeah? The extensors of the forearm can be found on which side of the forearm? Anybody?
Posterior.
Thank you. Posterior side of the forearm. And they all essentially have an origin of what?
Lateral epicondyle.
Lateral epicondyle. Every last one, really, in one way or another. Some feature of the lateral epicondyle. Yeah. I love that. And then if they don't go to fingers or thumbs and they just go across the wrist, they often have what word in them to describe the wrist that they are extending? Ms. Everson.
Carpi.
Thank you. And they're all going to start on the lateral epicondyle, but if they end up over by the ulna, they will have what word in them as well? Yeah, Mr. Singletary.
Ulnaris.
Yeah, and Mr. Singletary, stay on. And if they stay over by the radius, they'll probably have what word in them then?
Radialis.
Thank you, sir. And that is how you decipher extensions of the forearms. Let's look at flexors of the forearm. Flexors of the forearm are found on which side of the forearm, everybody? Anybody? Somebody? Mr. Richards. Mr. Richards, please.
Anterior.
Yeah, sir. And what do you suppose, by the way, their common origin is? Yes, you're touching it.
Medial condyle.
Yep, medial condyle of the humerus. I keep saying humerus, by the way. That was perfect, by the way, sir. I keep saying humerus because I do want you to realize forearm flexors go across the elbow, which means it's not their job, but they can actually help to move the arm. Yeah. So if somebody was having elbow problems, which you will get people with elbow problems, of course we'd work bis and tris and brachialis and brachioradialis, but we'd get forearm flexors and extensors too. Those often play a part in the tension in the elbow. Okay, let's go on to these flexors. It sounds like you were already prepared for what we're about to see. Oh, we didn't do the extensor indicus. By the way, the extensor indicus is a short muscle and it does not go all the way up or anything like that. But it's an extra little finger muscle you have. actually goes over to the ulna. We'll come back to that later. So, flexors. Here we go. Flexors. We can see that they all, hopefully we can see, that they all start on this medial epicondyle, kind of get back onto the anterior side and go over here. Boom. Their names are a little bit different, but the concepts don't remain the same. You've got a flexor that goes across the wrist and ends up by the radius, and so it's called flexor carpi radialis. You've got a flexor that goes across the wrist and stays by the ulna, and so it's called flexor carpi ulnaris. By the way, I hope you guys are realizing really quickly it's very important to remember the radius goes to the thumb and the ulna goes to the pinky so you can keep stuff straight. And you've got a palmaris longus. I wish they would have called it flexor and they didn't, but it actually inserts into the palmar fascia of the hand. It really is another flexor of the wrist, but it's called the palmaris longus. And that is kind of a memorization thing. But you do know that your palm is on which side of your body? It's on the anterior side, actually. And so it would make sense that there'd be a flexor there called the flexor of the palmaris longus. So here's the flexor carpi radialis. I'm not trying to fly through these, by the way, but it's really very basic at this point. It's a flexor because it's on the anterior side. It ends up over by the radius. It goes across the carpals, so it's flexor carpi radialis. By the way, you can even guess, without even memorizing, that it inserts into the second metacarpal, because the second metacarpal is by the radius here. So even if you kind of forgot that and somebody got really nitpicky, which we will not in a test, but you could get that nitpicky and be like, well, I know it's close to this area. Excuse me. I inhaled my salad. Okay. Here's the palmaris longus. Kind of cool. Inserts into it goes underneath the aponeuroses here, and it goes into the palmar aponeuroses, which help give your hand integrity, but also means it pulls equally along and helps to flex your wrist, though, as well. Very, very cool. It says it inserts into the flexor retinaculum, and there is truth to that in the sense that the flexor retinaculum and the palmar aponeuroses are kind of fused together. And so this can be a real culprit with carpal tunnel and such. It's a really good muscle to loosen up this flexor. You'd loosen up all the flexors. I don't go out and look just for the palmaris longus, but just to tell you that. Mr. Overman, yes, sir.
This is probably obvious, but I'm having trouble with it because I'm thinking about the test, and if I just see this picture right here, how do I know I'm looking at the anterior side?
Oh,
the distinguishing feature.
The test would tell you.
Oh, it would? Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, as far as I know, it's not that kind of test, yeah.
Gotcha.
But I will tell you, by the way, sir, that one of the big problems people forget is they'll switch their medial and lateral side. So you really do have to remember, hey, in anatomical position, the radius runs by the thumb, and therefore this is the lateral side over here, and you have to remember this is the medial side. But it'll tell you if you're looking at anterior or posterior view, if it's important to the question, and you're not being dumb. And there are other ways to do that. Don't get me wrong, but it's not that confusing. Ms. Carrillo.
Yeah, I was gonna add on to it is a way you can also tell is the olecranon process. Like I don't see that.
No, the olecranon process would be up here. You don't see that. This radial tuberosity is actually on the anterior side. I mean, there's lots of stuff like that, but it doesn't get that tricky on any test I do. We want to, the test at the end of the year is to kind of think about the knowledge you're leaving with. It's knowledge I would hope you would know 10 years from now, if that makes sense, right? Anyway, here's the flexor carpi ulnaris. It's a flexor. It's on the anterior side. It attaches to the medial epicondyle. It does also attach to the ulna, but that's not important. You're going to be rubbing this area either way, and it goes across the carpals. So you would still find it by tracing it back to the medial epicondyle. That's my big point, right? I realize that's an additional attachment, but it's right where the belly of the muscle is. You're going to rub this. So, again, very easy muscles to decipher. We've got a muscle now that attaches, again, medial epicondyle. I totally admit it also attaches to the ulna, the interosseous membrane, the radius, but it starts here and it heads here, and it goes to all the digits, and that is the flexor digitorum superficialis. Now, if there's a superficialis, you can bet there is a deeper one, right? It is saying, this is the by the way, you've got more flexors, right, than you do extenders, because it's more important you be able to hold on to things than let them go. I realize metaphysically maybe it's better to let things go sometimes, but from a strength point of view, you need more power holding on to things than opening your hand back up. So, we've got a superficialis here. Underneath it, we've got what's called a flexor digitorum profundus. And for my word geeks out there, profundus means deep. It actually means deep. And so you've got a superficial and deep flexor digitorum muscle. Again, we would not ask you to distinguish between these. And if you think about it, if you go back to the other slide, one's going to cover up the other, and they're going to feel like a really big, thick, same muscle. I've never been able to distinguish between the two of them, right? And by the way, one inserts to the proximal phalanges. Oh, I'm sorry, one inserts to the middle phalanges, and one inserts to the distal phalanges. And so you can see the advantage of both those working together to help you get extra grip. So the really deep one goes all the way to distal phalanges. The more superficial one goes to the middle phalanges. And you see how, by the way, it makes a snake's tongue when it hooks onto those? Can you see that little level of detail down there? Looks like a snake's tongue. It splits right here. Yeah. That allows other muscles later to come sneaking up between it. We'll talk about that later. But it's there on purpose. So that's flexor digitorum, superficial and deep, but we call that superficialis and profundus. And again, the attachments I really want you to think about, all of them basically attach up here. They might have other attachments down here, but they all go here. And as you're going to find out at Washington when we tape stuff off, knowing where something starts and ends is super important. Knowing what it does in the middle is not so important, believe it or not. You're going to feel it in the middle. If you know the road, if you know that the I-17 starts in Flagstaff and ends up in Phoenix, you will see all the attractions along the way. You've got to get on the right road and end up at the right place. So the origin, the main origin and main insertion are what's most important. And I'm not trying to oversimplify. I'm also just not trying to waste your time. That's literally it. So again, we see somebody able to hit all the flexor tendons because they all kind of come together around the medial epicondyle here. Right? So when I am rubbing somebody's flexor, I rub the anterior forearm and head towards the medial epicondyle. When I'm massaging somebody's extensors, I rub the posterior forearm and head towards the lateral epicondyle. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Any questions on that before we, let me look at homework here, before we release homework?
Can you repeat that last statement you made?
Sure. Thank you for asking, Ms. Avalos. Because you're right. I love that she asked this, right? Because what's really important is how does this affect my massage? When I rub the flexors, I rub let's say I'm going from distal to proximal. I don't just go straight up the arm because actually I'm not quite going where I want to go. As I rub proximally on the flexors, I head medially towards the medial epicondyle of the humerus. So as I rub the anterior forearm proximally, I head towards the medial epicondyle of the humerus because this is how those muscles work. It's a little bit of a curve. When I work the posterior forearm for the extensors and rub proximally, I head out laterally towards the lateral epicondyle. You can actually see them on my forearm kind of heading over there. heading over there. That's what they do. Mr. Richards.
Why do you think the palmaris is not present in 11% of the population?
Is it the palmaris muscle?
It says the palmaris longus is absent in about 11% of the population.
Yes. I have absolutely no idea. I can tell you these questions, first off, get answered very differently depending on if you believe in evolution or not. And I only say if you believe in evolution or not because some people don't, and I don't want to upset anybody's religious viewpoints or anything else like that. But if you believe in evolution, the answer to that question, and all these questions that come up in the book where like 10% of the population, only 10% of the population has this thing, is you say, well, this thing used to be present when we were a different type of creature, and as we evolved, it slowly got dropped off, but it wasn't significant enough to keep people alive or kill them, so there wasn't a huge advantage, so it just is slowly disappearing from the population, and some people still have it, right? That grip strength isn't enough. It doesn't make enough of a difference to save you in a battle or whatever. It's just not a strong enough trait. Whereas wings, we would assume, if I grew wings, that trait would go really well, right? I'd come flapping into work, and I'd get all the girls, and we'd make more winged babies, and that's the belief in evolution. So I think if you go that scientific kind of evolutionary route, all these muscles where they're like, these 10% things, I think have to do with that. Yeah. If you don't go that route, then there's all sorts of answers you can have. But to me, that's kind of, I'm like, oh, it's a leftover. Yeah. Any other questions? No? You're like, release star and homework? Let us work on stuff? You have 2 bits of homework. You have a very exciting video on the thumb. I love thumbs. You love thumbs. You use thumbs. And you have a test on the flexors and extensors of the forearm. They are due, this homework is due Monday, March 21st. You have 10 days to do this homework because we're not back at school for 10 days. So you can pace yourself. You could do, I'm kind of calculating, you could do about 4 questions a day if you wanted to just pace yourself out kind of thing. All right, and they should be released on both sides. Everybody should be able to see them now. I'm going to silence myself, and I'll come check on you guys.